I used to call it my home. But to them, I was just the woman who cooked the meals, scrubbed the dishes, and scraped leftovers into the trash. The one who moved around the kitchen like a ghost in her own life, quiet, reliable, invisible. They called me Cheryl, I answered to Mom. But I couldn't tell you the last time I felt like either. The kitchen lights glowed warmly that night, bouncing off the polished countertops I'd once chosen with so much care. The scent of rosemary chicken still lingered in the air. I had spent hours preparing that dinner, hand-rubbed seasoning, fresh bread, lemon glaze on the roasted vegetables, even used the linen napkins Ashley liked to photograph for her Instagram stories. The food was beautiful. It was the kind of meal you make when you want people to feel cared for. And they did. Brian and Ashley, and a couple of their friends, they brought over without telling me. They sat laughing in the dining room, under the pendant light fixture I saved 3 months to buy. Their voices were easy, unburdened, full of wine, and inside jokes I didn't belong to. No one looked toward the kitchen. No one called my name. They never asked if I was joining them. They never saved me a place at the table. So I stayed where they always expected me to be, by the sink. I picked up the empty serving trays one by one. Brian's plate still had a wedge of chicken skin stuck to the side. Ashley's was smeared with balsamic. Their guests had taken generous second helpings, but didn't finish everything. I scraped the remnants into the trash, rinsed each plate, stacked them in the dishwasher. When I was done clearing, I stood in silence. The clink of glassware and hum of conversation were muffled by the partition wall. I could still hear them though, laughing about a TikTok video, talking about brunch plans. They sounded like a family, like a unit, like they belonged to one another. I ate at the sink. A cold spoonful of mashed potatoes. A chicken leg, no one wanted. No fork, just a paper towel tucked around my wrist. It wasn't the food that made me feel small, it was the way I was fed. Fork in one hand, dish towel in the other. I listened to the people I loved more than anything talk like I wasn't there, like I was just the woman who keeps the kitchen running, like the comfort of the house happened by accident. I used to think Brian saw me. I used to think Ashley respected me. But that night, I realized something I hadn't been brave enough to face. I wasn't family anymore. I was the help. After dinner, no one thanked me. They took their wine glasses into the living room and sank into the couch. My couch, while I wiped down the table and sealed leftovers into containers. I didn't expect applause. I never had. But I think there's something uniquely painful about being taken for granted in the home you built from scratch. They didn't mean to be cruel. That's the worst part. They just didn't think of me at all. When the dishes were stacked and the countertops were clean, I poured myself the last inch of red wine left in the bottle. It was warm, thin, and tasted like vinegar on my tongue. I drank it anyway, and sank onto the love seat in the corner of the kitchen, facing the window that overlooked the backyard. The flower beds I'd planted last spring were just dark shapes now, outlines of what once bloomed. The bird bath Brian helped me pick out when he was 8 still stood in the grass, slightly tilted, paint flaking from the rim. He used to love watching the birds gather. Now he didn't even glance out the window. I used to keep the living room walls covered with photos, school pictures, vacation memories, drawings from when Brian was in kindergarten. Ashley took them down last fall. She replaced them with framed quotes about vibrations and alignment and things I didn't understand. I let her. I told myself it was fine. Let them feel at home, I whispered, and I believed I was being generous. But the longer they stayed, the less it felt like my home at all. I looked at the clock. 11:40. The house was silent now. The laughter had faded. Ashley had gone to bed first, barefoot, wine glass in hand, still giggling at something Brian whispered in her ear. Brian followed with a glance at me, neutral, almost polite, and disappeared down the hallway. Not a word. Not thanks, Mom. Not come sit with us. Just silence. I pulled the throw blanket off the back of the couch and curled up, knees to chest. This wasn't even a proper bed anymore. Brian and Ashley had turned my bedroom into Ashley's filming space for her wellness videos. I stared at the ceiling. The hum of the dishwasher was the only sound in the house. Their laughter still echoed in my ears, not as warmth, but as noise. Sharp, distant, foreign. And in that moment, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt awake. That night, something inside me shifted. A weight that had sat on my chest for years began to lift, not all at once, but enough to notice, enough to know I couldn't keep living like this. I wasn't just a mother. I wasn't just a helper. I wasn't a background character in a house I paid for. I was the owner, and I was done playing small. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the dishwasher clicked off, and the hum of the refrigerator was the only sound left, I lay there on the couch, eyes open, staring at the ceiling I'd painted myself a decade ago. Pale cream with tiny cracks. No one else noticed. My fingers traced the edge of the throw pillow, worn cotton, floral print, a gift from my sister years back before she passed. Ashley hated those pillows, said they didn't match the neutral vibe she was curating. The room felt hollow. Every object around me, things I bought, scrubbed, saved for, was now part of someone else's story, someone who didn't even know how it got there. I tried to remember the last time Brian and I had a real conversation. Not one of those surface-level updates about his work or a TV show, but a real one. A moment when he looked at me and saw me as more than the person who kept the fridge full and the clothes clean. I couldn't find it. Every memory of him lately was wrapped in busyness. Always just stressed, always on a deadline, always somewhere else, even when he was home. But once, he needed me. I closed my eyes and went back in time. It was 8 years ago. Brian had just finished school, wide-eyed and overwhelmed, freshly married to Ashley, who didn't yet have her wellness empire dreams. They'd tried renting an apartment in the city, but money was tight and jobs were few. I remember the phone call. He sounded hesitant. "Mom, we're kinda struggling, just for a few months. Could we maybe stay with you?" He didn't have to ask twice. I'd already begun tidying the guest room before we hung up. "Of course," I said yes. I always said yes. "Stay here until you're on your feet. You shouldn't have to worry about money. Right now." That was the beginning. At first, I was hopeful. I cooked for them, happy to do it. I liked having people around again. The house felt alive. Ashley would chat with me in the mornings, sipping almond milk and talking about crystals or breathwork. Brian would occasionally join me in the kitchen, helping chop vegetables or flipping pancakes on Sunday mornings. But things shifted. Slowly, then all at once. Groceries became my responsibility. So did the bills. The little things crept in: the water bill, the heating, the internet package upgrades for Ashley's video uploads. I absorbed them all, without question. I told myself it was what mothers did. We give, we support, we make the landing softer. When Ashley wanted to repaint the walls, I helped tape off the trim. When they replaced the furniture I'd spent years collecting piece by piece, I smiled and said, "It looks nice." When my framed wedding photo was replaced with a canvas print that read "Good vibes only," I told myself it was just stuff, not worth fighting over. I stayed quiet when my own keepsakes were packed into storage bins and shuffled out to the garage. They needed space. They were building a future. I was just the past making room. But now that future had consumed everything. The bedroom I once called mine now had a yoga mat in the center and a soft ring light permanently affixed to the ceiling. My old vanity had been given away. The closet was filled with Ashley's workout clothes and branded hoodies. And Brian, he stayed mostly in the background, working, always working, though I never saw a paycheck come through. Never heard about promotions. Just long hours spent in the office with the door half shut, a coffee mug left beside the keyboard I dusted every Thursday. I shifted under the blanket, the fabric scratchy against my arms. The house was dark, but my thoughts were bright and relentless. Every moment I'd said "it's fine" echoed back at me like a betrayal. When did I become someone who asked permission to exist in her own house? I remembered once, when Brian was 10, he'd gotten sick, badly sick, with a flu that scared me. I sat up all night beside him, a cool washcloth in one hand, a thermometer in the other. He was burning up, delirious, and I whispered promises into his hair. "I'll always be here. I'll always take care of you." I meant it. I still do. But care is not the same as servitude. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders and sat up. The digital clock blinked 2:11. I walked through the house, barefoot. The tiles were cold, under my feet. I moved slowly, running my fingers along the edge of the dining table, the one I bought, second-hand, and refinished myself. Now covered in trendy placemats and designer centerpieces, I didn't. The hallway was quiet. The photos had changed. Now mostly of Ashley, her posed shots for social media, the two of them at brunches, concerts, beach vacations. There were no recent pictures of me. Only the old kindergarten photo of Brian that still hung crooked at the end of the hall. He was 6, smiling in a lopsided clip-on tie. I touched the frame, my thumb lingering on the glass. That was my boy. But the man asleep in the back bedroom didn't look for me anymore. Didn't see the woman who packed his lunches, who sat in the rain at soccer games, who once sold her wedding ring to pay for his car insurance. I turned back to the living room and sat on the couch once more. I was awake, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't hurt. It felt real. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was done. Not broken, just done. And that was something. The next morning arrived like any other. I was up before the sun. Before the birds even began to sing. My body moved on muscle memory. Quiet steps down the hall, careful not to wake anyone. Kettle on the stove, mugs placed on the counter, a rhythm I'd fallen into without ever realizing I was dancing to someone else's beat. I stood in the kitchen, slippers soft against the tile, slicing bread for toast. The morning light hadn't reached the windows yet. The only sound was the gentle crackling of butter hitting the skillet, the eggs beginning to sizzle. The scent of coffee and toasted rosemary filled the room. Ashley walked in, face lit by the glow of her phone. She didn't look up, her thumbs tapped across the screen like I wasn't even there. Her voice chirped into the air, half to herself, half to whatever followers were tuned into her live story. Just setting my intentions for the day, guys. Grounding in gratitude, breathing in alignment, she said sweetly, pouring herself a glass of almond milk without ever acknowledging me. I paused. The spatula hovered over the eggs. She had reached right over my shoulder for the glass. Didn't say good morning. Didn't ask how I was. Didn't notice the steam rising behind me or the breakfast I was cooking. She left the room with the same careless breeze she'd entered. The stove hissed behind me, the eggs still cooking. But I didn't move. My hand lowered slowly. I turned the burner off, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared out the window where the sky had just begun to brighten. The flower beds still sat there, untended, but somehow still blooming in wild little patches. The bird bath glistened with morning dew. It used to be mine, this view, this quiet moment. But even here, even now, I didn't feel like I belonged. I used to believe I was being helpful. I used to believe that mothers were supposed to keep giving, that silence was kindness, that my role was to make things easier for them. But somewhere along the way, I had erased myself. The woman I used to be, the one with hobbies, with a book club, with plans and loud laughter and long phone calls with friends, had quietly faded beneath the weight of meals and towels and grocery lists. She didn't disappear all at once, just shrank, inch by inch, each time I chose to stay quiet instead of speak up. I sipped my coffee slowly. It was still warm, still bitter. That was the morning I didn't finish making breakfast. For the first time in years, I didn't wipe down the counters right away. I didn't preheat the oven for Ashley's clean muffins. I didn't fold the kitchen towels into perfect little rectangles. I sat there and let the silence stretch. My eyes wandered to the fridge. On it were magnetized photos of Brian and Ashley on vacation, Mexico, Sedona, the cabin retreat with the hot tub, and manifestation rituals. None of them included me. I remembered standing behind the camera on Christmas morning, taking photos while they unwrapped gifts from one another and posed in matching pajamas. I remembered making the cinnamon rolls from scratch, cleaning up the ribbons and paper before the coffee even cooled. There were no pictures of me on the fridge. There never were. I left the kitchen and wandered through the house. The office door was closed. Brian's "Do Not Disturb" sign still hung crooked on the knob, just like it had for weeks. He'd been working on a pitch for so long, I forgot what the project even was. I knocked once, gently. No answer. I didn't try again. I passed Ashley's yoga mat in the living room. The ring light was still glowing faintly from her early session. The rug I'd once picked out, thick, soft, a deep maroon, had been rolled up and replaced with a neutral beige that better matched the aesthetic. The coffee table books were all about wellness, energy, and monetizing mindfulness. I opened the hallway closet. Inside were the board games Brian used to beg to play. Monopoly, Life, even Clue. I pulled them down one by one. Their edges were worn, boxes dented, some missing pieces. No one had touched them in years. I had held on to so much for them. Memories, objects, tradition. But none of it mattered anymore. I walked out to the garage. There, in the far back, were the boxes I'd packed up when Ashley started refreshing the space. My photo albums, the porcelain vase from my mother, the Afghan my aunt crocheted the year she passed. They sat there, dusty, stacked, like forgotten chapters. I opened one of the boxes and gently ran my fingers over a frame. It was a picture of me and Brian when he was 5. He had chocolate frosting on his nose, and I was laughing. Really laughing. Eyes crinkled, mouth wide, alive. That woman felt like a ghost. Not because she was gone, but because no one in this house remembered her. I carried the photo back inside and placed it on my nightstand. No, not my nightstand. The tiny side table next to the couch. That couch was my bed now. Still, I placed it there. I needed to see her, to remind myself that she existed, that I existed. And she wasn't just someone who folded towels and scrubbed pots. She was joy. She was fire. She was worth seeing. I folded my arms tightly across my chest and whispered to no one. You forgot me, but I remember. It was the first time in months I'd heard my own voice speak with certainty. I didn't tell anyone. Not Brian, not Ashley. There was nothing to say, no confrontation, no final plea, just a quiet decision that had settled into my bones like the first deep breath after winter. That morning, after I'd placed the photo frame back on the side table, I sat down with my coffee and made a list. Not on paper, just in my mind. What I would take, what I would leave, what still mattered. It was shorter than I expected. I stood slowly, moved quietly. It wasn't fear that made me tiptoe. It was something older, deeper, something that had learned not to disturb the world around it, even as it was breaking inside. I walked upstairs, not for them but for the last time for me. The room that used to be mine was still painted the soft sage green I'd picked out years ago. The walls were mostly bare now, save for a corkboard filled with Ashley's post-it affirmations and ring light shadows dancing over the carpet. The dresser was gone. The quilt I used to sleep under, folded neatly on the top shelf of the closet, had been replaced months ago by a white minimalist throw that matched her brand. I reached into the back of the closet where I kept a small suitcase, black with a worn handle and squeaky wheels. I hadn't used it in years, not since the last trip I took, a weekend with my sister before her cancer came back. The suitcase still smelled faintly like lavender and airline fabric. I packed slowly, deliberately. 2 sweaters, 3 pairs of pants, socks, undergarments, my toothbrush. I paused in front of a shoebox taped at the edges. Inside was the photo of Brian at the beach, age 7, grinning with his front teeth missing, the sunburned tip of his nose, the plastic shovel in one hand, the other gripping a dripping ice cream cone. I didn't hesitate. That came with me. I didn't take jewelry. I didn't take books. I didn't need more than what I could carry. Downstairs, I added a few more things to my handbag. My wallet. My driver's license. A few small keepsakes. My mother's locket. A tiny crocheted angel from a church Christmas market, and a folded letter I wrote to myself once on a particularly lonely New Year's Eve. I didn't write a note. They wouldn't have read it. I didn't leave a mess. They wouldn't have noticed. I walked one last time through the house, not as a final goodbye, but as a quiet inventory of what had been mine and what had been taken. The banister still bore the scuff marks from Brian sliding down it in cowboy pajamas. The hallway closet still smelled like cedar and dryer sheets. The pantry was full of food I had bought, labeled and organized. The calendar still had my handwriting marking Ashley's content days and Brian's meetings. My pen, my reminders, none of it for me. I stopped at the doorway of the guest bathroom. The hand towels still matched the set I'd chosen from a clearance bin years ago. Ashley had once called them old-fashioned in a video, but I liked them, pale yellow with a lace trim. They looked like sunshine. I ran my hand across the doorframe one last time. The wood was smooth under my fingers, worn from years of cleaning, painting, patching. My labor lived in these walls. And yet, I felt nothing tethering me here anymore. I opened the front door, the hinges whispering like they were surprised. The early morning air hit my face. Cool, still, untouched. The sky was just beginning to lighten. The faintest blush of dawn stretching over the trees. Birds chirped softly, in the distance, not quite awake, not quite asleep. The world felt new. I stepped out and gently pulled the door shut behind me. No slamming, no drama, just a quiet click of finality. My suitcase wheels whispered across the pavement as I walked down the steps, the ones Brian had sat on during Halloween, the ones I'd swept clear of leaves every fall. No one stirred. No bedroom lights turned on. No footsteps came running after me. I reached my car. It was old, but faithful. I had bought it after Brian left for college, thinking I might take a few road trips, visit friends, explore. I never did. Life got busy. People needed things. I loaded the suitcase into the trunk and sat behind the wheel. My hands didn't shake. My breath came easy. Before I pulled away, I looked up once more at the house. There was nothing dramatic about it. Just a house, vinyl siding, well-kept lawn, window boxes. Ashley never remembered to water, but I saw everything behind it. The years, the exhaustion, the love they never returned. And then I turned the key, and I left. The motel was 5 miles down the highway, one of those places with a flickering neon sign and curtains that didn't quite close. The kind of place people stayed in when they needed to disappear for a while. I paid in cash. The woman at the front desk didn't ask questions. She handed me a key, pointed toward room 7. Inside, the carpet was scratchy, the bedspread thin. The television was bolted high in the corner, already murmuring some late-night infomercial. I set my bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. It was the first time I'd sat in silence and felt peace. Not fear. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't check my phone. I just sat there with my hands in my lap and let the quiet fill every space they used to take. The first night alone was quiet. Too quiet. Not the comforting kind, like when the kettle whistles softly in a peaceful kitchen, or when the wind brushes against the windows after a long day. This was the other kind. The kind that echoes, the kind that makes you realize how much of your life has been filled with noise you didn't ask for, voices, demands, footsteps that never came to check on you. I didn't unpack right away. The suitcase sat at the foot of the bed, still zipped. I wasn't ready to put roots down anywhere. I needed to feel weightless, like I could leave at any moment, like I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. The motel room was nothing special. Thin carpet with a pattern that tried too hard, a blanket that felt like sandpaper, a single chair by the window, and a microwave on a counter too low for comfort. The curtains didn't close all the way. I pushed a chair against them anyway, just to feel like I was blocking the world out. The television played something in the background, home shopping or reruns of a sitcom laugh track I couldn't stand. I muted it. I needed silence. I needed to hear myself think, even if the thoughts were painful. I stared at my phone for a long time. Nothing. No missed calls. No texts. Not from Brian. Not from Ashley. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a flurry of panic, a desperate message, even just a simple "Mom, where are you?" But there was nothing. Only the same darkness that had crept into my own house, now following me here. I curled up on the edge of the bed and pulled the stiff blanket over me. It smelled like bleach and something older, cigarettes maybe, or mildew, hiding behind the air conditioning unit. The kind of smell that tells you you're only ever supposed to stay here a little while. I tried to sleep, but the silence roared. I turned onto my back and stared at the ceiling. Yellowed plaster, water stains, blooming like bruises. I used to spend so many nights staring at ceilings. The one in my old bedroom, back when I still called it mine. The one over the couch, where I listened to Brian and Ashley laugh behind closed doors while I pretended to be asleep. This one was no different, except now the silence was mine. Owned, chosen. Morning came too fast. The weak sunlight cut through the curtain crack and landed on the carpet like a question I didn't want to answer. Still no messages. Still no calls. I sat at the motel's plastic desk with a paper cup of coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. I watched the cars pull in and out of the parking lot. A young couple arguing by a minivan. A man in a suit brushing donut crumbs from his lap as he unlocked his door. Life moved on. No one knew I was missing. And maybe I wasn't. Maybe, for the first time, I wasn't missing at all. I was exactly where I needed to be. I picked up my phone again, not to call, but to scroll. I opened the photo gallery, dozens of images, birthdays, holidays, dinners, Brian with candles lit in front of him, Ashley posing with a wine glass, and perfectly arranged appetizers, pictures of them on the beach, in restaurants, laughing on the porch, under string lights. And me? I wasn't in a single frame. I was always behind the camera, always holding the scene together. Never the one being held. There were so many meals I'd made that no one photographed, so many hours I'd spent making everything feel warm, comfortable, homey, and yet my presence never seemed to matter enough to document. I was the arms that wrapped around the family, not the face anyone looked at. I thought about calling, just to say I was okay, to explain, maybe. But then I remembered how many nights I stood at the sink, scrubbing the same pots and pans while they toasted each other in the next room. I remembered the way Brian looked at me without seeing, the way Ashley reached past me, like I was a cabinet door. I powered the phone off and set it down. If they wanted to find me, they could try. I wasn't hiding. I was done chasing their recognition. That day passed slowly. I walked to a nearby gas station for bottled water and a sandwich that tasted like plastic. I sat in the motel's gravel lot on a curb and watched the sun lower itself behind a strip mall across the street. I didn't cry. I didn't regret. I just sat. It wasn't peace, not yet. But it wasn't pain anymore either. It was something new, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. Back inside, I took out the small photo I'd brought. The one of Brian at the beach. His missing teeth, his sunburned cheeks. I propped it up on the motel nightstand beside the room's fake wood lamp. He was mine once. He needed me once. But something had shifted, and now I didn't know who he was. I wondered if he was home yet. If Ashley had noticed the fridge was empty. If they thought I'd just gone for groceries. I pictured them scrolling their phones, lounging on the couch, assuming I'd be back soon. They didn't know I had left with nothing but a suitcase and a quiet heart. They didn't know I was never coming back. It was the silence that told me everything. 3 days had passed. 3 mornings where the sun lit up the stained motel curtains and not a single text waited on my phone. 3 nights of microwave dinners and stiff motel blankets, pulled to my chin. And not once did Brian or Ashley ask where I was. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Come home." Not even a half-hearted, "We miss you." I wasn't lost to them. I was removed. The world outside kept turning. Every car in the motel parking lot came and went. I watched from the chair by the window, like a passenger in someone else's life. Across the street, a pawn shop flickered a red neon sign. People stepped in and out, arms full of guitars, vacuum cleaners, boxes, everyone trading something for survival. I looked down at my phone. Still dark. No messages. And then a thought hit me. A quiet little ember, tucked behind all the years of exhaustion and giving. The house. They were living in my house. I hadn't signed it over. Not officially. When Brian and Ashley moved in. It was supposed to be temporary. I never imagined I'd need to transfer the deed or argue over ownership. We were family. And family doesn't fight over paperwork. At least, that's what I believed back then. But now that they had erased me from the frame, now that they treated my presence like a background hum, they didn't just forget I existed, they forgot the roof over their heads wasn't theirs. It was mine. I opened my laptop. The same old one I used to use for recipe searches and checking the weather. The motel Wi-Fi was slow, but it worked. I logged into the county clerk's site and pulled up the property records. There it was. My name, clear as day. Owner, Cheryl Ann Wallace. They hadn't even tried to change it. I stared at the screen, blinking. Maybe they assumed I wouldn't leave. Maybe they thought I'd never check. Or maybe they just didn't think about me at all. That was the moment it changed. From heartbreak to something sharper. Not rage, not revenge, clarity. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to beg them to treat me like more than a servant. I had something stronger than their opinions. I had the documents. For so long, I had let love cover everything, my labor, my money, my silence. But love without respect was just exploitation in a prettier dress. I sat with that thought for a long time, sipping the motel coffee that still tasted like cardboard, staring at my name on that screen. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't stuck. I had the title. I had the bills. I had every grocery receipt, every utility payment, every maintenance fee logged in my personal email. And most of all, I had the will to use them. Later that afternoon, I made the call. The lawyer's office was small, quiet. The woman who answered sounded professional, but kind. "Hi," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "My name is Cheryl Wallace. I'm the legal owner of a home currently occupied by two people who haven't contributed financially in over 2 years. I want to sell. Can you help?" There was a pause. Then the woman said, "Yes, Cheryl. I absolutely can." We scheduled the first filing for later that week. She emailed me a checklist of what to prepare. I already had most of it. My name was on everything: utility bills, property taxes, the insurance. Ashley had made herself the face of that house, but the foundation still wore my name. The irony stung. They had built their little curated life on my back, decorating, filming, playing house, without once acknowledging the hands that held the walls up. They posed in front of the fireplace I installed, filmed their morning routines in the kitchen. I remodeled, reorganized the pantry. I remembered Ashley's soft, dismissive tone. "Can you grab some more almond milk when you're out?" Like I was the help. Like the fridge stocked itself. Like the gas bill paid itself. Like the roof over her curated life just floated down from the heavens. No more. That evening, I sat at the motel desk with a yellow legal pad and began writing. Not a journal. Not a letter. A list. Dates. Amounts. Accounts. A timeline of everything I paid for, from the week they moved in until the morning I left. Every Costco run. Every electric bill. Every vet appointment for their dog, which I had covered when they were tight on cash. It was more than numbers. It was a record of how much of myself I had poured into that house. I didn't do it for credit. I did it out of love. But now, I saw it for what it was: a ledger of invisibility. No one clapped. No one noticed. No one said thank you. They just kept asking for more. Until there was nothing left of me. But I was rebuilding now. Slowly, quietly, like a woman laying bricks with her own hands. This wasn't about vengeance. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was simply done allowing them to build their comfort on my silence. The legal pad was nearly full by the time I looked up. The motel room was dark, save for the yellow pool of light from the table lamp. I looked at the photo again. Brian, 7 years old, grinning, at the beach. I whispered aloud to him, "I still love you, but I love myself more." It took 2 more days for Brian to notice. 2 full days without meals prepped, towels folded, groceries restocked, or the background hum of a woman holding the house together. I imagined Ashley pacing through the kitchen, wondering why there was no almond milk, no gluten-free granola, no dishwasher running in the background. I imagined Brian opening the fridge, finding it empty, realizing his coffee grounds hadn't replenished themselves. At 8:13 a.m., the first message came. "Hey Mom, are you okay? Haven't seen you around." Flat, casual, like I'd missed a dentist appointment or a grocery run. "No, where are you?" No, "we're worried," just an observation, like someone noticing the garbage hadn't been taken out. I didn't reply. I didn't even open it. I read the preview on the lock screen and let it sit there, untouched. I stood at the window of the motel room, the same spot where I'd watched the sunrise each morning. Today, the pavement in the parking lot glistened with last night's rain. A man loaded boxes into the back of a rusty SUV, while his daughter sat on the curb, tying her shoes. I sipped the last of the motel coffee, cardboard and all, and felt something stir in me. They were going to feel it now. Not because I was trying to punish them, but because they had never realized how much I gave. The second message came that afternoon, this time from Ashley. "Hey Cheryl, not sure if you're feeling okay. Things are a bit crazy around the house. We could really use your help. Let us know when you're coming back." Your help. Not "we miss you." Not "are you safe." Just a gentle reminder that their free labor force had gone missing. I actually laughed. A real bitter laugh that surprised even me. I put the phone face down on the motel table and returned to my list, cross-checking receipts, tallying expenses. The stack of papers had grown into a folder. I labeled it in big black letters, House Value. I had no idea what Ashley and Brian were doing back at the house. Maybe they were scrambling. Maybe they thought I was having a mood or taking a break. But they hadn't yet figured out I was gone for good. The next morning, I walked to the library down the block, tucked my laptop under my arm, and took a seat at the farthest table in the corner. The place was warm, filled with the smell of paper and that gentle stillness only libraries carry. I pulled up the county records again, just to be sure. My name, still mine. No transfers, no claims, no hidden surprises. I'd been living like a guest in my own house, and now that I had stepped out of it, I saw the truth in every square inch. They had staged their lives on a foundation I built. The next text from Brian was more urgent. Mom, can you call me? Ashley's freaking out. We didn't know where you went. You could have at least told us. At least. The bar was on the floor. It wasn't. We miss you. Or, we're sorry. It was. You should have made this easier for us. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I went back to the motel and made another call to the lawyer. She picked up on the second ring. Hi, Cheryl. Ready to move forward? Yes, I said, the word as clean as glass. I'm ready to sell. She confirmed. The paperwork. No obstacles. No complications. The house was solely mine. They had no legal ground to stand on. The letter would go out Tuesday. Certified mail. Signed receipt. Required. I pictured Ashley opening that envelope, fingers manicured in pale pink, flipping it open like it was a wedding invitation. I imagined her reading the words she never expected, her mouth opening just slightly in confusion, then denial, then I imagined Brian sitting on the couch, my couch, the one I bought secondhand and had reupholstered by hand, reading the letter like it was some cruel joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was truth. For years, I'd held that house up by myself, paid for it, repaired it, filled it with warmth, and for years, they walked through it like it belonged to them, not realizing the ground beneath them could The letter would be the first tremor. That evening, I powered my phone back on. A dozen new notifications waited. Ashley, please just let us know what's going on. The house feels empty. We're worried. Brian, this isn't like you. Can we please talk? Just for a second. Ashley, again. The kitchen is a mess. The laundry's piled up. Brian's overwhelmed. Please come home. And then, you can't just leave like this. Oh, but I could. And I had. I stared at that last message for a long time. They thought I owed them closure, that I owed them an apology for my absence. But they had never apologized for making me disappear in plain sight. I closed the phone and slid it into the drawer. I didn't want their noise contaminating my silence. Back at the motel desk, I returned to my notebook, but this time, I didn't just write numbers. I wrote memories. The time Ashley laughed and called my casserole quaint. The moment Brian watched me wash dishes on his birthday without saying a word. Every time they made weekend plans in front of me, without a glance in my direction. Each memory had a weight, and each one now rested outside of me, where I could see it for what it was. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake. A pattern. They didn't just forget me, they erased me. And I let them, until now. The letter landed on their doorstep exactly as scheduled. Tuesday at noon. Certified. Signed. For. Delivered. I didn't need to be there to know how it went. I could see it all in my mind. Ashley pulling it from the mailbox. Annoyed at first because she thought it was junk. The way her fingers peeled the seal open. The way her smile faltered when the first words settled in. Notice of intent to sell. Her eyes scanning line after line, the signature at the bottom. Mine. Legal, clear, irreversible. I imagined the way her voice probably cracked when she called out for Brian, waving the envelope like a smoke signal. I imagined him sitting on the couch, my couch, his brow furrowing, confusion spreading like a slow leak before the panic set in. She can't do this. But I could. She wouldn't really sell it, but I would. And then, just like that, the ground beneath them started to shift. I didn't hear from them that day, and I didn't expect to. Shock has a way of silencing people. But by nightfall, the calls started again. Brian, first. Mom, what are you doing? Please call me. Ashley is losing it. We can't lose the house. There it was. Not we're sorry. Not we didn't realize. Just panic. Just fear. I didn't pick up. Instead, I sat in the motel chair by the window and watched the parking lot light flicker against the windshield of a rusted sedan. The world looked different now. Not lighter, not darker, just clearer. For the first time, I was breathing without someone else's weight on my chest. The next message came from Ashley. Her voice wasn't angry yet. It was sweet, coated in that performative concern she always used in her videos. Cheryl, we're really worried about you. This isn't like you. Please, let's just talk. You don't have to do anything drastic. Drastic. That's what she called me, walking away. Not forgotten, not disrespected, not erased. Drastic. As if I were the storm, not the woman who had held the roof above their heads through every quiet insult, every subtle dismissal, every ignored moment of need. I didn't answer. I didn't explain. I let the silence do what it had always done, speak the truth. They didn't want to hear. Over the next few days, the messages continued. The tone shifted. Less sweet. More sharp. You're being unfair. Brian doesn't need this stress right now. We're trying to figure things out, but you just disappearing, it's not okay. Unfair. That was the word that finally made me close the notebook and stand up. Not ungrateful. Not blind. Not selfish. Unfair. They thought this was about punishment. About payback. It wasn't. It was about balance. I had given for years. And they had taken, shamelessly, effortlessly. Now that I stopped giving, they didn't know how to survive. Because the house never ran on magic. It ran on me. I thought about all the small, invisible things, the toilet paper that didn't refill itself, the fridge that didn't restock by wishful thinking, the pantry arranged by hand, the laundry folded by rhythm. They had never seen me do it. But now that I wasn't there, they noticed the emptiness. The silence wasn't an absence. It was a mirror. And they didn't like what they saw. I heard from neighbors through town. Small whispers. Ashley's car had been repossessed, right from the driveway. The credit card companies were calling the house daily. The wellness business she had flaunted on Instagram was unraveling. Fewer videos, no new posts. One final quote graphic about resilience and rising through adversity, then radio silence. Brian's LinkedIn hadn't updated in over 4 months. He wasn't in a project. He was unemployed. Quietly, desperately unemployed. Everything they built was smoke. And now that I was no longer behind the curtain pulling levers, the illusion couldn't stand. One morning, I sat in the motel lobby with my coffee and opened Ashley's Instagram one last time. The most recent post was over a week old. The caption had been long, dramatic, ending with, "Sometimes people leave, and it's painful, but necessary. Trust the universe. Let go of what no longer serves you." I laughed again. A hollow, quiet laugh. Let go of what no longer serves you. That's what I'd done. Let go of them. They built their identity on my back. They posed for their followers in rooms I paid for, wrapped in comfort I provided. And now that it was all slipping, they clung to the only thing left. The illusion that I might return. But I wouldn't. I had given them comfort, but not strength. And now they were discovering that difference the hard way. That night, I pulled the papers from the folder again. Sale documents, the lawyer's timeline, my signature in black ink. I traced the line beneath my name, not with doubt, but with satisfaction. It was happening. This time, I had the ending. It was nearly 3 weeks after I left when I heard the knock. 3 short raps, firm, uncertain. Not the kind of knock you hear from someone confident or entitled, but from someone unsure if they're still welcome. I stood still for a moment. The motel room was quiet. The desk lamp buzzed softly. My pen rested on top of the legal folder I'd just finished updating. My breath steady. Another knock. A little louder this time, then a voice. "Mom?" It cracked just slightly. "Are you in there?" I didn't rush. I walked slowly to the door and placed my hand on the knob. My fingers hovered over the chain. I didn't unlatch it, not right away. From behind the door, I could hear his breath. Uneven. Nervous. I opened it just enough to see his face through the crack. There he was, Brian. Same shaggy hair, but now messier. Same eyes, but ringed with fatigue. He looked like he hadn't been sleeping. His clothes hung looser on him than I remembered. His shoulders slumped like the weight of his carefully curated life had finally settled where it belonged. He leaned against the doorframe, hands shoved into his jacket pockets. "Mom, what are you doing here?" His voice was soft, like he wasn't sure whether to sound concerned or annoyed. I stared at him a moment longer before answering. "Living somewhere I'm seen." He blinked. "What does that mean?" I tilted my head. "You came all this way, and you don't know?" He ran a hand through his hair, let out a deep breath. "Ashley's freaking out. We didn't know where you went. You could have at least told us." There it was again, at least. The same tone he used in his first message, as if my absence was an inconvenience, not an awakening. I kept my voice calm. "I'm not your maid, Brian." He flinched, just slightly. His eyes searched mine like he was trying to find the mother who always softened, always folded, always forgave. Instead, he found someone steady. "Look, I get that you're upset, okay?" he said, voice tightening. "But you can't just walk away from us, from family." Family. That word always rolled out like a magic spell, but it only appeared when they wanted something, when the groceries ran low, when the dishes piled up, when the weight of comfort became too heavy without me there to carry it. "You didn't treat me like family," I said quietly. "You treated me like background." His mouth opened, but no words came out. I didn't open the door further. I didn't invite him in. "You should go," I said, voice level. He stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. He wasn't used to no, not from me, not from the woman who made his life seamless for decades. "I don't get it," he muttered. "You were always there. You didn't say anything. We just thought you were okay with it." I narrowed my eyes. I wasn't okay. I was quiet. There's a difference. He shifted his weight. "Ashley didn't mean what she said that night. You're taking it too personally." I almost laughed. "Too personally." "Brian," I said, "I was standing at the sink, eating scraps off your plates, while you laughed with your friends. You watched it happen. And you didn't think it hurt." His face paled. "You didn't say anything," he said, a weak defense. "I didn't think I needed to," I replied. "But maybe that was my mistake." A long silence stretched between us. He kicked at the floor with the toe of his shoe, his voice barely above a whisper now. "I didn't realize how much it hurt you. And you never bothered to ask," I said. There it was, the truth, unadorned. He finally looked up at me, eyes red, guilt rising behind them. "I'm sorry, Mom." The words fell out like loose change. Not shiny, not enough. I nodded slowly. "I believe you. But that doesn't fix anything." His jaw clenched. His shoulders sank further, defeated. Can I be part of your life at all?" he asked, voice cracking. I didn't answer right away. I let the question sit. Let it echo. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But if there's going to be a place for you, it won't be one you get by default. You'll have to earn it." He nodded, slow and heavy, like he finally understood. "Take care of yourself, Brian," I said. And then, gently, I closed the door. Not with anger, not with bitterness, with clarity. The latch clicked back into place. It sounded louder than any argument we'd ever had. He didn't knock again, and I didn't look through the peephole to see if he'd waited. I sat down on the edge of the bed and exhaled. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty this time. It was mine. Brian didn't come back the next day. Neither did Ashley, but the messages kept coming. Short, clipped, getting less polite with each one. "We need to talk. You can't keep avoiding this. This is childish. Mom, you're hurting the people who love you." Love. They kept using that word like it was supposed to mean something, as if love had been flowing freely all those years. I stood barefoot at the sink, scrubbing their dishes, as if it lived in the way they walked past me without noticing I hadn't eaten, as if love could be claimed without effort, without empathy. I didn't answer any of them, not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I had finally learned something important. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power. I had spent a lifetime filling the quiet for other people. Now I was letting it fill for me. I sat at the motel desk, watching the sun slip across the carpet, warm and golden, and I let the silence stretch between us, like a bridge they'd have to decide whether or not to cross on their own, without guilt, without manipulation. My phone buzzed again. "Brian." "Mom, please, We need to talk. This is serious. You're not thinking straight. That made me laugh. A quiet, breathy sound with no real humor in it. You're not thinking straight. It's funny how quickly people will question your sanity the moment you stop performing the role they assigned you. When you stop nodding, stop smiling through the disrespect, stop folding laundry like forgiveness, they don't know what to do. Because people like Brian and Ashley thrive on quiet compliance. And when that disappears, they panic. I opened my notebook again, not the one with receipts or bills, but the new one, the one I'd started writing in the week before, the one filled with thoughts I used to swallow, the one that held my story, not theirs. I wrote, "They didn't just forget me, they relied on me being forgettable." I underlined it. That was the truth. Without me in the background keeping everything steady, their life was crumbling, and the more it fell apart, the more they reached for me, not as a person, but as a safety net. The problem was, I wasn't there to catch them anymore. Later that afternoon, I walked to the diner a few blocks away, the kind with red vinyl booths, and a waitress who called everyone Han. I sat in the corner with a plate of pancakes and a fresh cup of coffee, the kind of meal I hadn't cooked for myself in years. I ate slowly, every bite. No interruptions, no one asking for seconds, no one expecting me to clear the table. Just me, just food, hot, whole, mine. I scribbled more notes while I ate, thoughts about what I wanted in this next phase. Not revenge, not drama, just space, peace, a home that was mine again, not one where my existence had been buried under noise and dishes and empty wine glasses I never got to fill. By the time I returned to the motel, the light was fading. My phone lit up again. Ashley, this time. This honestly isn't fair. Brian's under a lot of pressure right now. He doesn't need this. And there it was again. Fair. As if fairness had ever been part of our arrangement. As if fairness was watching someone pour themselves into your life every day and never acknowledging them once. As if fairness was letting someone feed you, clean up after you, and disappear in front of your very eyes. I didn't reply. I put the phone down. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to explain myself. That was new. That was healing. I sat on the bed and pulled the house files folder from my bag. I reviewed the timelines again, sale date, notice period, final paperwork. 2 weeks, that's what they had left. 2 weeks until the house would no longer be theirs. 2 weeks until the space they curated for the internet was no longer a stage. 2 weeks until the place they ignored me in would belong to someone else entirely. I thought about showing up for the open house, just once. Just to stand in the hallway and watch potential buyers walk through the living room, where Ashley used to film yoga tutorials, where Brian used to scroll his phone while I cleared their plates. But no, that would be a waste of time. Because this wasn't about being seen by them anymore. This was about finally seeing myself. The next morning, I took my coffee and my notebook to a small park nearby. The trees were starting to green again. A few birds hopped along the grass, pecking at crumbs. I sat at a bench and wrote. I used to think quiet made me small, but it was in the quiet I found myself. It wasn't profound, it wasn't poetic, but it was mine. My entire life had been about supporting others, anchoring others, staying small so they could feel big. And now that I had stepped away, I wasn't vanishing, I was becoming. They were free to fall apart without me. I didn't owe them the structure anymore. It was nearly a month to the day since I'd left, when I heard the knock again. 3 raps, this time slower, heavier, not uncertain, not angry, just hollow. I knew before I opened the door that it was Brian. Something in the air shifted the moment he arrived. I felt it in my bones. I stood on the other side of the door, my hand resting against the wood, listening. There was no movement, no breathless follow-up, just stillness. I opened the door slowly. No chain this time. I didn't need it. He stood there, looking smaller than I had ever seen him, thinner, shoulders caved in. His face was drawn, his eyes sunken with exhaustion. His hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. He wore the same jacket, but it hung looser now. "No, Ashley." He didn't speak right away, just stepped forward once, stopping short of the threshold. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I stepped aside. He moved like someone who wasn't sure how to carry his own body anymore. He sat on the edge of the motel chair, hands clasped between his knees, staring at the floor. The silence stretched between us like a fragile thread. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I didn't come here to ask for anything," he said quietly. "I know I don't deserve to." I stayed standing. He exhaled shakily. I don't understand how I let it get this bad." I crossed my arms, not as defense, but as grounding. "You didn't let it. You chose it. Every time you stayed silent, every time you watched me carry the weight, every time you told yourself, that's just what moms do." He nodded, slow, lips pressed tight, eyes glassy with unspoken regret. "I was blind," he whispered. I shook my head. "No, you weren't blind, you just didn't care to see." He wiped at his face roughly with both hands, as if trying to scrub the truth off of himself. "Ashley's gone," he said suddenly. I didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't say I told you so. Didn't need to. "She moved back with her parents last week," he went on. "Said I was useless, said she was done." He looked at me then, the broken boy behind the adult mask. I spent so long thinking I was protecting her, supporting her. But the truth is, I was hiding behind her, letting her be loud, so I didn't have to take responsibility. I walked over and sat across from him, my hands folded calmly in my lap. "You let her treat me like help, Brian," I said, like I was just there to serve, like I didn't have the right to be seen. He winced at the words, but didn't deny them. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, voice cracking. The words hung in the air, soft, fragile, real, but not magic, not enough to fix what had been broken for so long. "I believe you," I said quietly, "but it doesn't change what's been done." He gave a tiny, sad smile. "I know." I let the silence return. I didn't rush to comfort him, didn't jump to make it easier. "I don't hate you, Brian," I added, "but I love myself more than I love the idea of what we were supposed to be." His shoulders sank, even lower, like the words hit him harder than anything else I could have said. Can I be part of your life at all?" he asked again. I stood slowly, walked to the door, hand resting on the knob. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But if there's ever going to be a place for you, it won't be one you get by default. You'll have to earn it." He stood, nodding once, tears brimming in his eyes. "Take care of yourself, Brian," I said. He walked out into the hallway, the weight of reality pressing into every step. I closed the door behind him, gently. Not with anger, not with grief, just done. The house sold 2 weeks later. The paperwork came through quietly. No drama, no last-minute surprises. My lawyer emailed the confirmation on a Wednesday morning. I opened it in the silence of the motel room, coffee in hand, and stared at the document with my name at the top and the new owners' names below. It was over. I didn't go back to see them pack. I didn't need to. I already knew what was in those boxes, the life they built on my back, the furniture I bought, the walls I painted, the comfort I provided. But none of it belonged to them anymore. And for the first time in years, I didn't want it back. I moved into the new place 3 days after the house sold. A small apartment, across town, just 2 rooms and a narrow balcony that caught the morning sun. The carpet was thin, the kitchen tiny, the water heater finicky, but it was mine. Every square inch. Mine. I didn't bring much. A few clothes, my notebooks, my favorite mug, the photo of Brian on the beachfront, teeth missing, ice cream melting down his chin, and my mother's locket, worn and warm from years of quiet prayers. The first thing I bought was a table. Just big enough for 2. Dark wood, secondhand, slightly wobbly. Perfect. Not for serving, not for entertaining, just for sitting, for eating my own food, hot, while it was still hot. No one hovering. No one asking for seconds. No one letting my plate go cold while I cleared theirs. I sat down, that first night, with a bowl of soup I'd made for myself. The good kind, with thick noodles and vegetables, that still had bite. I lit a candle, turned on the radio, and I ate every spoonful in silence. But this silence was different. Not the aching kind, not the empty motel room, phone staring kind. This was full, rich, alive, chosen. I wasn't waiting for someone to ask me to sit anymore. I had built a place for myself, and I filled it fully, without apology. There were nights after that where the quiet crept back in, tried to whisper old doubts. I'd hear a sound outside and wonder if Brian might be standing there, palms sweating, wanting another conversation. I wondered if Ashley had tried to call from a number I didn't recognize, voice syrupy again, ready to recite a fresh version of concern. But they didn't call. Brian hadn't reached out since the motel. Maybe he finally understood. Maybe he was still figuring out what it meant to earn space in someone's life instead of assuming it was owed. I didn't know. I didn't chase the answer because I had stopped waiting at other people's tables and started living at my own. Most mornings, I wrote. I filled page after page in fresh notebooks. Not about them, not about what they did, but about the woman I'd forgotten. The one underneath the chores and the silence and the politeness. The one who loved music and rainy mornings and dancing barefoot in the kitchen. The one who once dreamed of going to Italy, even if she never made it past the travel books. I wrote her back into existence. She had always been there, just under the surface. Waiting. Some days, I went to the park with my coffee and sat on a bench with the sun on my back. I smiled at strangers. I listened to the wind. I learned how to sit still without feeling like I needed to be useful. For the first time, I wasn't chasing productivity to feel worthy. I was simply being. I passed a mother once, young, harried, tugging a toddler along while talking on the phone. She looked at me and gave a tired smile. I smiled back. She didn't know me, but I knew her. I had been her, and I wanted to tell her something I wished someone had told me. Don't disappear for everyone else. You get to matter too. I didn't say it out loud, but maybe she heard it anyway. One afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, the handwriting unmistakably Brian's. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the table and stared at it through dinner. I made chicken, with rosemary, the way I used to, but this time, just for me. I ate slowly, purposefully. After the last bite, I lit a candle, rinsed my plate, dried it, and only then did I open the envelope. Inside was a single page. Mom, I know I don't deserve a reply. I just needed you to know I'm trying to understand. I've started therapy. I've moved in with a friend. I'm working again. Real. I think about you every day. I think about how blind I was, how small I made you feel. I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for what I didn't do. You were never the background. You were the heart. If there's ever a way forward, I'm willing to earn it. Love, Brian. I didn't cry. I folded the letter slowly, pressed it flat, and slid it into the back of my notebook. Not as a wound, as a witness. He was trying, and that mattered. But it didn't require me to undo everything I had done to reclaim myself. Forgiveness wasn't a door swinging wide open. It was a window cracked slightly. Time would tell if he could reach it. That night, I stood on the small balcony, the breeze warm on my skin. The city lights blinked in the distance. Quiet, gentle. Below, a couple walked hand in hand. Someone laughed. In an open window, a dog barked somewhere down the street. Life moved on. So did I. Not bitter, not broken. Just free. I turned back inside and closed the balcony door, the soft click behind me, final and whole. At my new table, the candle still flickered, a seat still waited, but only if I chose to share it. And for once, that choice would be mine. To anyone out there who's ever been made small in their own home, who's ever been laughed at while they scrubbed the plates, who's ever been served scraps after giving everything they had, hear me now. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your breaking. You get to choose yourself. And when you do, that's not losing. That's winning in a way they'll never understand.